G'day champions, would you look at this little cutie? 1963 champ. Got a trio of tweeds here at the moment. We've got more tweed than a bloody geography teacher's fashion show. So this one's come in with reports of rattling from possibly the driver or the baffle. Hopefully it's not the driver. Hopefully we've just got some loose screws or something in the baffle or the speaker itself. But we'll investigate that. Now, it's had a previous recap. Used high quality caps, in my opinion a bit overpriced, but they are good. The spray got them. However, they are only rated at 65 degrees, which is it's like a cup of tea, mate. Cup of coffee temperature. I'd like to see higher rated caps than that, especially at the prices they demand for them. Now, we've got an Electro Harmonics 6v6, 5x3 brand unknown, probably on the other side. I'll take it out shortly when we clean the sockets. That's not the original shield, but it is holding in place, and what looks like I think looking at that silk screen's somewhat eroded away, but I think that was a mini watt 12AX7. Now, it looks like we might have had a output transformer replacement because it's got very fresh looking PVC insulated wire, and it is a 120 volt or 117 volt whatever power transformer, so we'll be running it through our little step down, massive step down over there. But first things first, the rear panel, you've probably heard some of these have asbestos on the rear panel, and this one's no exception. Not sure why they bothered doing that, because the hottest bit is sort of, you can see down here, it's discolored the tweed, but not really damaged anything. The hottest part of the thing is sort of away from the cover anyway. They have made the cover so it sort of semi comes down and half covers the valves there, so I guess that offers some protection, but personally I'd probably have the cover flush with the bottom of the chassis, and that way the hot air can sort of escape. It won't build up under that lip there. But yeah, that asbestos matting, it's white asbestos, so it's like 5% less deadly than blue asbestos. So all precautions were taken. We put it straight into a Ziploc bag without disturbing it, but there could be some fibers in the chassis or in the cabinet as a result. So I'll be carefully vacuuming that out with the HEPA filter vacuum cleaner. And what we'll do with the back is we'll bond it. So we'll mix some PVA or wood glue to like 10% glue, 90% water, or say 20% glue, 80% water. Just roll that on with a foam roller just to avoid disturbing it with brush strokes. That will bond the fibers together, and then we'll put maybe a thicker coat on top of that. So the first coat soaks right into the fiber and bonds it all together, and the second one's just to protect the surface and stop it from getting scratched in the future and emitting fibers again. And after we've done that, we'll put some aluminium flashing over it, so just some 0.5 millimeter thick aluminium, and we'll just put that in place with some contact glue. So that will give us shielding from heat as well as electrical shielding, which it doesn't currently have, and it will also lock in that asbestos fibers. But we'll do that at the home workshop outdoors. I don't want to risk asbestos fibers floating around in my shop down here being an enclosed space. And I'll take the cabinet and chassis home to give it a blast with compressed air once it's vacuumed out as well, just out in the open in the backyard. Not ideal, but as long as you're careful with it. So onto the amp, we'll check for leakage in the board, leakage of those caps. So it's got those blue molded Ajax made in the US. They're generally pretty good long term, not like the yellow Astrons. All the electrolytics are probably fine, but all the resistors are still the original carbon composition, so we'll test them for any significant drift outside of tolerance. Check the board for leakage, check the valves for their viability. We're going to try and keep this one as close to how it is as possible, but we've got some non-compliant fusing there. These are always a bit of a compromise because of the pot-mounted power switch. If you put active on the power switch, then you've got 240 volts, or in this case 120 volts, right next to the volume control, which is gain control towards the front end of the circuit, so you can get hum and noise issues from the proximity of the mains right next to the signal. So I tend to just make an exception for wiring code on this one. Electrical regulation, and I will fuse the active but switch the neutral on this one, just so we don't have the big voltage swing there right next to the signal. There's no other way around it really without modifying the amp, adding a switch or whatever. Mounting the fuse internally, I guess, could be an option, but yeah, for this one it's a vintage piece. We're trying to keep it as close to factory condition as possible. So it's a 63. It's in the sort of transition period before they went to the blackface construction with the horizontal chassis and the slanted front panel black Tolex. And they carried that through to the Vibro Champ and onward. So this one was actually being produced at the same time as those. So I guess they were just using up excess stock. But we'll check the date on the transformers if they are indeed original and try and pin it down to an actual date. The cord's been replaced with a decent quality molded one, which is great. Looks like we've got a replacement cable clamp in there too. I'm not sure if the originals even had a cable clamp. I'll just remove the 6v6 there temporarily, and you can see we've got a Weber Classic Alnico, which are good drivers, but we'll see if that buzzing's coming from the speaker itself. What can happen on these thin basket speakers is you drop the amp a few times, the mass of the magnet actually distorts the basket, and you start getting voice coil or polling, we call it, a voice coil rubbing. And that manifests itself as ghost notes and weird distortions and rattles and things that almost sound like oscillation, parasitic oscillation, but it's just the physical speaker causing it. So hopefully we're not dealing with that, but you know how hope works out around here. Alright, so just working my way along with the vacuum. You can see on the left there, she's a bit dusty in the back. Just getting in there with a little brush, trying to clean it up as best we can, just dry. No, not using any chemicals. I don't think we'll need to on this one. It is crazy. I don't know if it's just hindsight, it's 2020 or whatever, but the world had such a hard-on for asbestos. It was in fucking everything, like roof tiles, floor tiles, wall, bloody plaster, just anywhere they could put it, they put it. Under tile, insulation, even mix it with tarmac for roof sealing, that kind of thing. So working on old houses, if you guys are doing renovations or whatever, just be super careful, because it can be things that are seemingly innocuous, like lino, like linoleum used to have it in it. It was everywhere, dude. Almost like AI these days. They just shove it up your ass. They probably had it in their fucking breakfast cereal. I know my uncle used to work at, I think he worked at a shipyard in Melbourne somewhere, and they used to have big piles of white asbestos lagging, you know, the stuff you wrap around steam pipes and whatever to insulate them. And they used to lie on big piles of it and have their smoker, have their lunch, because it was, I'd imagine it would have been pretty itchy, but at least it was soft to sit on. Yeah, he's still kicking, so I think it's a little bit of a lottery thing too. Some people get smashed by it that have never been around it, and other people, they just get one fibre and it does them in eventually. But some people, it just they get lucky, but we don't want to rely on luck, do we? God knows I don't. Alright, so the bottom of the chassis cleaned up pretty well, just dry without using any alcohol or anything. I'll just give the cabinet a quick vacuum, and then we'll give this thing a bit of juice and just see what it does, have a quick play through it, and see how it reacts, see if we can pin down that resonance or vibration or whatever's going on. All right, champions, we've got the little chooser up and running. She's drawing a little bit more current than I expect, about 45 watts from the wall. There is also the waste current in the step-down transformer too, though, so it's probably around 40 watts-ish total. But I'll check the bias point. Often these can be biased a bit hot from the factory, partially because they're a bit optimistic in terms of valve life, but also because the mains is a little bit higher than the original transformers were wound for. So got just the 57 up here, just trying to capture a bit of this cabinet or whatever it is rattling and see if we can narrow down what it is. So I'll just play a bit of bass notes, work my way up the neck, and we'll see how it responds. Right, champion, so I'm not trying to make everyone leave the video. I'm playing discordant stuff because that's often what shows up any faults with amplifiers, be it in the power supply or vibrating cabinet components, or problems with the filtering or speaker issues. And in this case, I hope the mic picked that up. There's like a really papery, sort of brittle buzzing sound happening along certain notes, but not specific to any exact note. Kind of just the most energetic signals from like the 3rd fret up to the 12th. So there's like a papery, really brittle, buzzy noise happening from about the 3rd fret up to the 12th, but not on any one specific note. Doesn't seem to be related to the filtering, because you'd have ghost notes and products of the 100 hertz mixed with your frequency of the signal. It's just a constant rattle. So we'll give it the signal generator. I'll put my guitar away and I'll free up both my arms, and we'll see if we can manipulate stuff and make it come and go. Alright, so unfortunately I think it is the speaker itself, because manipulating, I tightened everything, tightened the baffle, checked the chassis for any loose screws, nothing there changed it at all. Putting a bit of pressure on the magnet on the back there, pushing one way makes it much worse, pushing the other way makes it completely disappear. So I think we've got a misalignment with the voice coil, and it's a little window of opportunity between the magnet and the pole piece. So let's remove the speaker. I'll get the chassis out first. We'll check that out, and we'll see if we can address that issue with the speaker in isolation. Right, champions, we've got the chassis out. Don't mind the beeping in the background if you can hear it. I've just got one of these under test. Got the little meters down there. They beep if they detect anything drastically wrong. They beep continuously. Just having a look inside the cabinet. You can see the finger joint there. Probably better lighting on this one. Loosey-goosey. Bloody bit rough, but until together all these years, so I guess it's adequate. But yeah, it's funny looking at the old stuff, how when things are done by hand, they tend to be a lot less precise than we have these days. Anyway, looking at the speaker, my fears are real. Damn it, these baskets. There's like no reinforcement there at all. It's just really thin little webs of thin little webs of metal with no like features on them to stiffen them up. So a bit of a drop, a bit of a hit, and this magnet just wants to keep going. So I think that's what's happened with this one. What we might be able to do, it'll probably be temporary at best, is maybe just give it a bit of a tap back the other way, and we'll see if we can make it, you know, overcome the modulus of elasticity of the basket, and bend it back the other way to give that voice coil a bit of room to move. So we'll do that acoustically by feeding it some signal from the signal generator, just manipulating it around, and maybe just giving it a couple of just light little love taps with the rawhide hammer. As you see on other speakers, pretty much all other speakers all have stiffening methods. Like, see, there's a lip that actually turns in, so it becomes more like a beam, a load-bearing beam, rather than just a plate of metal. And then they've got this feature here which stiffens up that section as well. And they've all got their own little ways of doing it. Here's the Jensen and the MOD series. They've got that same feature there, even though they don't have that return lip on this design. They've still got that rib. And down here you got some eminence, neodymiums, and they've got that same feature. It's not there for decorations, champions. It is there for strengthening that basket. So I guess in this one they've just assumed that lightweight magnet, small driver, would be adequate, but I think that's what's happened. It's been dropped at some point, probably on its side, and it's pushed the magnet one way, and she hasn't come back. So let's feed it some signal, and we'll see how it works in isolation now that we can move it around freely. But while we're in here, I thought you might want to have a look at the sticker tube chart with typical moth-bitten paper. You can see around the edges, created like a feature there, like you see on some greeting cards. And on the other side, we've got the date code, 0463. So I guess that's April 1963, yeah? Just the timber on these is so much higher quality than you get these days too. Look how close together the grain is. This is like old growth timber. All the stuff you get these days, it's grown so quickly that the rings are really further apart and the grain's a lot more sparse, whereas these are really really nice timber. Alright, so feeding it some signal, like 100 hertz. Bit of pressure there. We can trigger it. Probably most sensitive. Trying to find where it's most easily triggered. So it seems to be when we push that direction, it's most easily triggered. So I'm super hesitant to take a hammer to a friggin' speaker, but let's just give it a tiny tap, a little calibration, if you will. Nothing to lose, really, eh? I mean, otherwise it's a speaker replacement. So I've got my little fretting hammer there. It's got rawhide on one side rolled up and copper on the other. Just give it a bit of a tap this way. Alright, champions, after a little bit of a just very gentle tap, sort of balanced it a bit like balancing a tyre. Do not do this, but this was a last resort, otherwise speaker replacement. And look, it appears to have worked. One other thing to check, which is more applicable to like bass speakers, speakers with a lot of excursion expected. I have had some where the wires that connect to the voice coil are too long, and under extreme output, or sometimes not even that extreme, but just pretty high output, the cone's moving so much that the wires are actually hitting the back of the cone, and it sounds like distortion. In that case, I've shortened the wire, pulled it, melted that solder on the tags, pulled it through, say, 1/4 of an inch, if that, and that was enough, just enough to solve the problem. So, but that's not the case. I had a look with the mirror on this one, and there's plenty of clearance there still. So, oh, until the mirror hits it, I thought it came back then. Alright, so I think we've sorted that issue out. I might just, since tightening these up, I might just take them back off again and put some lock washers on there, you know, just star washers, or I'll see if I've got a Kep's nut of that same thread. Speaker's the part you really want to have a Kep's nut or something on, something with a bit of preload so it doesn't loosen itself off with vibration. Probably wouldn't hurt to do the same for the baffle screws as well.